Welcome back to Love and Emotion Stories, where love stories come alive through words that touch the heart. If you enjoy emotional, romantic tales, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that will make you smile, cry, or believe in love again. Sophie sat curled up on her couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the glow of her phone lighting up her tired face. It had been one of those days. Endless meetings, a late train, and an exhausting storm of responsibilities. She unlocked her phone to vent to her best friend, typing furiously. Ugh, today was the worst. My boss is a nightmare, and if I have to sit through one more meeting, I swear I'll scream. She hit send and tossed phone aside, pulling the blanket tighter. Moments later, her phone buzzed with a reply. I'm sorry to hear that, but I think you have the wrong number. Sophie's brows furrowed. She picked up the phone again and realized with horror that she had mistyped one digit. Instead of venting to her best friend, she had poured her frustration out to a complete stranger. Her cheeks burned. "Oh, God," she muttered. She quickly typed back, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That wasn't meant for you. Please ignore me." A moment later, the reply came. "No worries. Happens to the best of us. For what it's worth, your boss sounds like a real pain." Sophie blinked, then laughed despite herself. Who was this stranger? Over the next few minutes, Sophie and the mystery number exchanged light-hearted texts. "I promise I'm not usually this dramatic," she wrote. "Sure you're not, but it sounds like you needed to vent. Free therapy session, courtesy of a stranger." There was something refreshing about it. Talking to someone who had no idea who she was, no expectations, no history. Just words on a screen that somehow felt lighter than anything she'd shared in weeks. By the time she went to bed, Sophie had a small smile tugging at her lips. She expected the conversation to end there, just a random blip in her week. But the next morning, as she sipped her coffee and prepared for another grueling day, her phone buzzed again. "Good morning, stranger. Hope today treats you better than yesterday did." Sophie stared at the message, warmth spreading through her chest. Who was this person? She typed back quickly, "Thanks. I'll need all the luck I can get." And just like that, their chat continued. Days turned into a week, and what had begun as a one-time mistake blossomed into a daily ritual. They exchanged jokes, stories, frustrations, and confessions. Sophie found herself waiting for his messages. The little pings that brightened her day and made her laugh at moments when she wanted to cry. He never told her too much about himself, just little hints. His name was Daniel. He worked in tech. He loved coffee and late-night runs. He had a sarcastic sense of humor that perfectly matched hers, but he respected her space. He didn't pry, didn't push, and that made Sophie trust him even more. One night, after a particularly long chat, Daniel sent a message that made Sophie's heart skip. "No, it's funny. A wrong number shouldn't have mattered. But I'm glad you texted me, Sophie." She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. For the first time in months, she felt seen. Not just by a colleague, not just as someone venting, but truly seen. And though she'd never met him, Sophie realized she was starting to look forward to Daniel's messages more than she'd ever expected. The days passed quickly, each one anchored by the messages Sophie now waited for with quiet anticipation. What began as casual exchanges had grown into something more. Late-night conversations that stretched for hours, where the world outside seemed to fade away. One night, lying in bed with the glow of her phone on her face, Sophie typed, "Do you ever wonder how strange this is? Talking to a complete stranger like we've known each other for years." Daniel's reply came almost instantly. "All the time. But I'm not complaining." Sometimes strangers are easier to talk to than the people you actually know. She bit her lip, staring at those words longer than she should. It was true. With Daniel, she felt lighter, freer, unburdened. One evening, Sophie had just come home after tripping in the rain and spilling coffee all over herself. She snapped a quick photo of her ruined blouse, captioning it, "My luck," in a single picture. Seconds later, Daniel responded with laughing emojis. "You look like a soaked raccoon. But hey, still kinda cute." Her cheeks warmed. "Cute? He'd never crossed that line before, never flirted outright. She tapped back nervously. Gee, thanks. You sure know how to boost a girl's confidence. Just telling the truth, raccoon girl. And for the first time in a long while, Sophie laughed until her stomach hurt. Their chats weren't always light. Sometimes Daniel grew quiet, his messages slower, shorter. One night, after Sophie teased him about always working late, his reply came with a weight she didn't expect. I stayed busy on purpose. It's easier than thinking too much. Sophie paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to ask, but she didn't want to push him away. Finally, she typed, thinking too much about what? There was a long pause before his response. About mistakes. About people I've lost. You know, life stuff. Her chest ached. There was a crack in the wall he kept so carefully built. She replied gently, We've all lost things. But sometimes new things come along when you least expect them. His next message was softer, like a random text from a stranger. She smiled to the sting in her eyes. Exactly. Their bond deepened with each passing day. But Sophie couldn't shake the growing curiosity about him. She knew his voice through his words, his humor through his jokes, his heart through his confessions, but not his face. Late one night, after hours of laughter and honesty, she typed, Okay, this is crazy, but don't you think it's weird we don't even know what the other looks like? Her heart thudded as the typing dots appeared. Maybe, but maybe it's also what makes us different. It's not about appearances. Just us. Just the words. She stared at the screen, torn between relief and disappointment. He wasn't wrong. And yet, deep down, she longed to see the man behind the words that had begun to mean so much to her. As Sophie drifted off to sleep that night, she realized something undeniable. This wasn't just fun anymore. It wasn't just a distraction. She cared, and whether Daniel wanted to admit it or not, she could feel that he did too. The wrong number had somehow become the right connection. It had been 2 months since Sophie had first texted Daniel by mistake. 2 months of late-night talks, laughter, confessions, and the kind of closeness she hadn't felt in years. But the question lingered. Who was he, really? One evening, as Sophie sat curled on her couch, Daniel's message came in. Okay, don't freak out. But do you want to meet? Her heart stopped. She read it again, her pulse racing. Meet. She typed and deleted 3 replies before finally sending. Are you serious? Dead serious. Same city, same streets. It feels crazy not to, unless you don't want to. She sat frozen, staring at the words that could change everything. And then, with trembling fingers, she typed back. Yes, let's do it. They agreed on a quiet coffee shop, halfway between them. Sophie spent hours debating what to wear, finally settling on a simple dress and her favorite scarf. She didn't want to overthink it, but every nerve in her body screamed with anticipation. Walking into the cafe, she scanned the room, strangers laughing, typing, sipping coffee, and then she saw him. Daniel. He stood as their eyes met, a nervous smile tugging at his lips. He was taller than she'd imagined, with a kind face that carried the weight of his words, and eyes that looked like they'd known pain but hadn't lost their light. Hi, he said softly, almost as if afraid the moment would vanish. Hi, Sophie whispered back, her throat tight. For a moment, they just stood there, strangers who weren't strangers at all. They sat, ordered coffee, and talked, really talked. And though their voices were new, their words felt like old friends slipping back into rhythm. Daniel leaned forward. You know, I was scared you wouldn't show. Sophie smiled. I almost didn't. But then I thought, if I don't, I'll regret it forever. He nodded, his gaze softening. I get that. I've lost enough chances in my life already. Her heart ached, remembering the shadows in his messages. She reached across the table, brushing her fingers against his hand. Maybe this time you won't have to. Time slipped away until the cafe lights dimmed, signaling closing time. Neither wanted to leave. As they stood outside, the cool night air wrapped around them. Daniel hesitated, then said, Sophie, I don't know what this is yet, but it feels right. Her chest tightened, warmth rising to her cheeks. It does. It really does. And then, with the city lights glowing above them, he leaned in, just close enough for her to feel his breath. Not a kiss, not yet, but a promise. Walking home, Sophie replayed the night in her mind. The way he looked at her, the way their words felt even more real face to face. The wrong number had led her to something she hadn't dared hope for in years, the possibility of love. And as her phone buzzed with his final message of the night, she couldn't stop smiling. Same time tomorrow? She typed back without hesitation. Absolutely. Thank you for listening to The Accidental Text. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Comment below. What would you do if a wrong number led to something real? Stay tuned for more heartwarming love stories right here on our channel.